You've selected a show from the Podcast Jukebox, a DIY podcast network.
Hi, and welcome to Off the Cuffs, a kink and BDSM podcast for those in the lifestyle and those who are curious. Topics contain explicit adult material, so if you're under 18, please ask a parent or guardian for permission. After all, podcasts don't have safe words.
Welcome to Off the Cuffs.
Wait, because all I hear is clomping, which is hot.
Yes,
but probably not great for an audio recording.
Yes,
so there's someone walking around in heels above our head right now.
Amanda Riley.
Yes, sit-in guest of the show.
Yes,
at once. Yeah,
once upon a time. Yes.
I like every time Max is like, "Welcome to Off the Cuffs." He's like waving his hand.
I know. It's weird that I do it, but it is. It's like I've picked it up over the past 2 years.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome, listeners.
Okay,
so let's start over.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
do it again.
Let's start over for the third time.
Yes.
Let's see it again for the first time.
Oh, what was that the tagline for?
Titanic. Yeah. God, it's so fucking embarrassing when I remember that shit like that. All right, let's go again for the first time, for the third time.
Welcome to Off the Cuffs, episode number 101. I'm Minimus Maximus.
I'm Dick Wound, and this week we are not really on this episode very much. We had gotten a lot of requests over the past 2 years to have people be put in touch with Jack-TPK, who does the BDSM 101 class in our local community. And so for episode 101, we decided we would just record the 101 class to present to all of you. And it's a good class for everyone to listen to, but also if you want to start your own 101, it basically gives you all the information you really need. It's a good template. Yeah. And also Jack is free to reach out to get more information.
Right, yeah, no, he will share like his notes and his PowerPoint slides for the class with you, and just listen, make it your own if you do want to run a class like this in your own area, because I think every area should have this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's it.
All right, enjoy.
Without further ado, enjoy.
Yes.
I like to start my class with the guarantee. I am only 70% right. Which 70% right, you'll have to figure out. But I guarantee I'm at least 70% right with what I'm saying. BDSM is intensely personal. Everybody will find their own way through it. Should you find anything that I've gone over tonight that you think I'm wrong about, I'd love to hear that. Please come back and tell me I'm wrong. Nothing makes me happier. This is BDSM 101. I'm Jack. I'm your host for the evening. One of the most important things that I like to talk about is up on the slides right now, and that is be very polite. It will get you a long way in the community. It is, at times, a little bit of a formal community at times. It can be a little bit intimidating to come in. Being very polite will get you very, very far in the community. And the reason that is because if something happens and you make a mistake, you're a new person, you come in, something goes wrong, and you go, I'm new, I didn't realize, I'm really sorry. You're going to be welcome back. That's the kind of person we want to have around. Again, if you're new and you make a mistake and somebody points it out to you and you go, I'm new, I didn't know what was going on, fuck you. You're not the kind of person that we want to have around. So when you come in, if you're nervous, go to polite because you'll be fine. Make sense? See, this is just the header slide, and already we've gotten started. The next thing I like to point out is that you're not crazy. I have to qualify that. You might be crazy. Your interest in BDSM doesn't make you crazy. Up until recently, interest in this particular activity was a diagnosis. The National Coalition for Sexual Freedom was very involved in working with the medical professionals and having that removed as a diagnosis in the DSM-4, DSM-5. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It is the textbook that your psychiatrist will use to diagnose what type of crazy you are. Interest in this hobby, interest in this lifestyle, is not a diagnosis if you are not actually harming yourself or others and it is not causing problems in the rest of your life. Now, not harming others. We mean long-term harm. Okay, this is play, this is consensual, this is fun between people that are consenting to do it. We're talking long-term harm, we're talking abuse. That can be a diagnosis. So you're not crazy for wanting to be interested, you're not crazy for coming down tonight. It's a hobby. It's a little bit more unconventional than bowling, but it's still something that you're interested in. It's still something you want to do. It's still something people are very passionate about. BDSM is not inherently dangerous. It's also not inherently safe. You are the people that will make it dangerous or safe for you. Like any other hobby that you're going to pick up that's a little bit more involved, if you're going to pick up a hobby for, Mario Kart, that's not that dangerous. But if you're going to pick up a hobby to start doing something outdoors, if you're going to take up mountain climbing, you wouldn't go directly to K2. You'd take some classes. You'd read some books. You'd look online. You'd join some groups of people. Develop some friends that are into the same thing. You'd do some research on your equipment. What to buy, how to use it, how to maintain it. You'd go to more classes. You'd get a guide. You'd get yourself some experience. You'd start on a small mountain. And maybe after you've been mountain climbing for 10 or 12 years, maybe then you're ready for K2. This is the same type of thing. If you go to K2 on day one, you're probably going to hurt yourself. Take your time, learn what you need to do, and you can do this safely and have a really good time doing it. Make sense to everybody? Putting your hand up is nonverbal. I'm looking to everybody that I haven't seen before to put your hand up. Because if it makes sense to me, then I know I can move on with you guys, and I'm kind of doing my job. I kind of look at myself as somewhere between a flight attendant and a game show host tonight. The other thing I like up here is it's not always about pain, and it's not always about what the dominant wants. Those are some stereotypes that we see very commonly, whether it's in novels or on movies. It's not always about what the dominant wants. The dominant should be getting what they want, but the person who is on the other side of that, the submissive, the bottom partner, should also be getting what they want out of it. Both people should be exactly where they want to be. If you are in a position and you don't want to be there, then you should find a way out of that situation. Make sense? You guys are great. It's not always about pain. Yes, I have a lot of floggers and things up here that will hurt people. Sometimes it can be about mental play. Sometimes it can be about bondage. Sometimes it can be about behavior control. There's a lot of other things other than just hurting people. I know people that are part of the community that don't do any of that hurting stuff. They're not interested in it. They don't have any fun with it. So it's not always about pain. It can be part of it, but it's not required. There should be a difference between a dominant type and a bully. Has anybody here seen Back to the Future? Biff from Back to the Future is not a person I would want as a dominant. There should be a difference between a dominant and a bully. If you're going to be a dominant, you should remember that. If you're going to be a submissive and a bottom partner, you should remember that. This applies for everybody. Submissive types are not doormats. They are not there to be walked on and walked over unless that's your particular kink. That's Max from the Off the Cuffs podcast. He's a friend of mine. I've known him for 25 years, and he actually is into that type of play. But submissives are not doormats. If you'd like to try and work that out when you go home tonight, pick up your doormat, throw it on your living room floor, and demand that it go down on you. It's not going to work out very well. Submissives are not doormats. They are not to be walked over, used and abused, and just stepped on and disregarded. They're people too. They can be treated like a submissive, but a submissive is a person. Remember that no matter which side of that you're on. Any questions before I move on? No hands. Good, you guys are getting this. What is BDSM? So this is where I like to have two hands, but I only have one because I'm holding this darn microphone. So I will improvise. What does B&D stand for? What does B&D stand for? It's up on the slide. Bondage and discipline. The B is actually pretty easy. Thank you. Thank you, Vanna. Hang on one second. Bondage and discipline. Bondage is actually pretty easy to work with. It's restraint in some form. Some people will be tied up with rope. Some people like leather cuffs, steel handcuffs, manacles, saran wrap. It's a lot of different ways to be restrained. Ace bandages, awesome. But bondage is just about that form of restraint in some fashion, in some way. And it can be a lot of fun. The D for discipline, for me, is the hardest one of all the things to talk about. Because what does discipline mean in a kinky BDSM setting? It means there's a hierarchy. It means there's a system. There are rules. There are penalties. There are consequences. There is a way that things are done. When I think about that, I think about discipline and the military. Has anyone in the room ever served in the military? Nobody? Usually we have somebody who's served. If you're in the military and you're doing something wrong and you're not fitting in the system, you will find out very quickly. Discipline in BDSM is very like that. It's where most of your hierarchies, rules, protocols, that all fits under the discipline piece to it. Having a system to the way things are done. It's the most difficult piece for a lot of people to get their head around. Does that make sense? All right, everybody. Welcome in the back. Hi, I'm Jack. I'm your host for the evening. We'll talk more. Just so you know, we are recording tonight for use on a podcast. So I just want to make sure that you know. Now, Vanna, we need the last two now. So, what does SM stand for in BDSM? Sadomasochism. That's right. Now, if we were going to talk about sadomasochism, and we were only going to use one word to describe what sadomasochism is about, what one word would you choose? Ow. Ow, that's a good one. Pain is another good one. Pain is the one I like to go to. Thank you, Vanna. S&M is about playing with pain. It's about playing with discomfort. It can be something very mild. Maybe when you're having sex, you like to have nails dragged down your back. That's pretty mild in terms of all the other stuff I got here on the table. But that's playing with pain. You can go all the way to the other extreme. There can be some very extreme forms of play that are playing with pain. But it's about playing with that discomfort. There are people that enjoy to be on the inflicting side, and there are people who enjoy to be on the receiving side. And that's just fine, as long as you're doing it with somebody who is exactly where they want to be. A lot of times, people on both sides get a little bit confused, a little bit uncomfortable, especially some of your more traditional male identities get caught up in how they treat a female person. It can be a little bit strange at times. What's important is that You and your partner are both where you want to be. And that's what makes things okay. Make sense? Okay. Vanna? This is fantastic. I've never had Vanna before. I've always had to do it all myself. DS is in the middle. And DS is, I like to talk about it at the end. What does DS stand for in BDSM? Dominance and submission. Thank you, Vanna. I like to talk about DS at the end because the other activities that we talked about are much more about how you play and what you're doing and what you're having done to you or doing to someone else. Dominance and submission is really a lot more about why. Why is this happening? It's about playing with authority. It's about playing with control, power, responsibility. The one that makes people uncomfortable is when I start to talk about playing with choice, because that's really what it's about if you're going to talk about dominance and submission. If you're going to play there, it can be a lot of fun. Make sure you're playing with somebody that wants to be there. It's about taking possession, taking control. With taking control, there should come taking responsibility. If I'm in a dominant relationship and with my submissive partner, and I'm going to take control of my submissive partner financially, and I'm going to change her 401k choices, I should be responsible enough to handle the downside of those decisions. If I'm not responsible enough to do that, I shouldn't take that authority. I shouldn't take that responsibility. If you're on the submissive side and you're looking at giving up something to someone else to make choices, to give up that authority, if they cannot handle the downside of those choices, you may want to reconsider whether or not you want to give up that power or authority. Make sense? It's an awful lot of fun. I really enjoy that. Any questions about that? In the back.
I have a lot. When I think about new people and the questions that I've had people say is they're kind of floored when I say that BDSM is not just slang for kinky sex.
Doesn't have to involve sex at all.
And when I tell new people that to our community, they go, really? Because I thought it was all about sex. You know, the pain, the dominance, all revolves around sex. And
it can if it does for you, but it may not for them. It's not mandatory, not at all.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
And there are a lot of people who engage in this between friends, which conveniently brings me to my baseball analogy. And we're going to talk about these three people in the second row here. They've been best friends. You may not know this. They've been best friends for 30 years. And they were recently out. They told me the story when they came in. They were out to coffee last weekend. And in the glasses here on the end, you know, I know what happened. You broke down in tears. And you shared a deep, dark secret that you've never shared with anybody, with these old friends. You've known them for 30 years, and you're finally revealing to them. There's nothing you like better in the world than batting baseballs. It's your favorite thing. Your friend here, next to you, with the awesome hairstyle, laughed at you. After 30 years of being your friend, you admit this deep, dark secret, laughs at you with hysterics because he has his own deep, dark secret, and he knows you're totally wrong. There is nothing better than pitching. You're an idiot. Which brings us to number 3 in this story, who I've specifically chosen because I've met you once or twice before. She looks at both of you with complete disregard, that you have no idea what you're talking about, because this person, she knows there is nothing she likes better to do than field. There is nothing better than chasing balls. Now, for everybody in the room, They go to Dick's Sporting Goods, they pick up some equipment, they go to Eisenhower Park, they have a blast playing baseball all day long. Which one of them is the dominant in that situation? The answer is none of them. They're just three friends having a good time in the park. These activities can be just like that. You do not have to give up control to get tied up. You do not have to give up control to be spanked. It can just be something that is of your own choice. Some people like to spank. Some people like to be spanked. Well, if they don't get together at some point, neither of them gets to do what they want. Now, if you're going to get tied up and spanked, it's very easy for a new person to get, but I'm getting tied up, I'm getting spanked. What do you mean I'm not giving up control? Within the community, we have negotiations. And the person who is going to have this done to them can set what is allowed. I want to be tied up, but you have to tie me up with the red rope, and you're not allowed to use the blue rope, because I hate the blue rope. You have to use the red rope. You can tie up my ankles, but you can't tie up my hands. You can put me over the chair, but you can't put me over the bench. You can spank me with the wooden paddle, but you can't use the leather one. You can also use your hand, but only your right one, not your left one. You can spank me with up to 20 times with each implement, and we'll be done within 15 minutes. How much control is that person giving up? None. They're going to get tied up. They're going to get spanked. They're going to get exactly what they've asked for. You do not have to give up control in order to play. You do not have to take the control. Some people aren't interested in being dominant. I just like to tie people. So you can do this like going to play baseball in the park. It doesn't have to be dominant and submissive, but it can. Roles. Now that we've talked about what BDSM is, there's a lot of language. The community has its own verbiage and the way that things are identified. So part of the language I like to go over now that we've talked about what BDSM stands for are the roles that you'll hear people talking about. In the back, yes?
The last slide said Kung Fu Master on the bottom. I'm wondering what that was about.
Well, he's a master.
Oh, that's not part of the hood. Okay.
Well, he's a Kung Fu master, right? Yeah, I dug deep for that one. I dug deep, yeah. Yeah. So, up here we have Dom Sub, and that's clearly identifying two partners. One is on the dominant side, one is on the submissive side. The next role that I have up there to say is Master Slave. A lot of these titles people will use interchangeably, Dom Sub, Master Slave. A lot of times the Master Slave label is applied to people that are in a dominant submissive relationship, but it is much more likely to be towards a total power exchange relationship. It is much more likely to be a committed long-term relationship. And that's usually the line I see between dominant and submissive and master and slave. Some people will use them interchangeably. I'm only 70% right. Top-bottom is the next one that's up there. Top-bottom specifically implies a lack of a power exchange in the relationship. Again, some people will use it interchangeably. I strongly discourage it. When you're in a top-bottom, you are not dominating or submitting. And that's why you're using a different label. A rope top is somebody that likes to tie people up, but isn't into dominating them. So that's really the line between dom, sub, top, bottom. Make sense? Be aware, some people will be a little bit sloppy with how they use those labels. Service top specifically applies to a type of top that is interested in doing an activity. They really enjoy doing a particular thing. It might be rope, it might be some form of electro play, and they're interested in doing that as a service for people that are interested in having it done to them. Kind of like giving a massage. Some people really like to give massages. It could be a massage top. So a service top is interested in doing a particular activity. Somebody might set up their electro play on one of these massage tables back here, and I've seen people play with 3 or 4 bottoms in a row that are interested in having that experience. And when someone says a service top, that's the kind of thing that is usually being implied. Big little. I haven't updated my slide. My last class, I was corrected. There's some of these other kinks that I'm going to talk about are what I call collateral kinks. They're not directly involved in BDSM, but they're right next door to them sometimes. Big little is actually a caretaker little, is now the politically appropriate term to be using for that. That usually implies some form of younger identity play. It doesn't always. It's not always necessarily age play, but it can be. But people that are enjoying things that are seen as typically younger. Stuffed animals, glitter, crayons. Some people will get actually into adult baby play. Some people will deal with age regression. And that all kind of falls in a really big umbrella category of caretaker and little. Not everyone that does it will do age regression. Not everyone that does it will have a younger age. A friend of mine is a little. She was in a backyard at a pool party I was at, and there were several other littles. They were on a blanket. They were coloring. They were glittering. They had books. They had stuffed animals. And the other little ass said, "What's your little age?" And she looked at her and said, "I'm 37. I'm just a 37-year-old that likes to do these activities." So little is a very broad category. If you're interested, there's a lot of activity here on Long Island for it. Owner and pet really applies to those people that are more classic into puppy play. I've seen pony play. I've seen kitties. I've met one lemur. So there's a number of different, but it's playing with those other identities. For some people, they like to become that animal. For some people, it is a role they take on. There's a number of different ways that it's approached, but it's a I'm very broad brushes here. Sadist, masochist, that's really easy. One person likes to hurt, and the other one likes to be hurt. Daddy doms is usually a very particular style of relationship. It can be related to littles. DLG, daddy little girl relationship. It is not usually anything that's incestuous. It's not that type of play. It really refers to that classical male caring, nurturing, guiding authority figure. And that's really what that refers to. It's not usually a daddy incest fantasy. Make sense? Thank you. Fetishists. There's a lot of different things that I haven't talked about that are collateral. Feet, armpits, leather, latex. There's a lot of other things that people are into that are not directly related to BDSM, but are pretty common. They intersect a lot. So you'll run into that. At the bottom, or make up your own. With my partner, when we were together, none of these labels fit for us. So we made up our own labels, and we were very happy with them. And when people didn't understand, we would just say, well, these are the labels we've chosen. Well, what does it mean? It doesn't matter what it means. This is what we've chosen. It means for our relationship. It fits for us. So if something doesn't fit you and it makes you uncomfortable, please make up your own. Use what makes you comfortable. And if it makes everyone else in the room uncomfortable, well, that's their problem. They have to deal with that, not you. If you don't like what's up there, make up your own. It's awesome. I did it. Make sense? Awesome. Again, collateral issues that I like to cover. Gender, orientation, and poly. Orientation is a sexual orientation, describes an individual's enduring physical, romantic, emotional, and/or spiritual attraction to others. What are you looking for as a partner in a relationship? It is a broad spectrum. My favorite example to use at this point are the sapiosexuals. God love the sapiosexuals. Sapiosexuals are attracted to intelligence. Brains. They really don't care what body those brains are in. They're attracted to intelligence. So it really doesn't come down to gender at that point, that they're attracted to. They're attracted to smart. And that's what orientation is about. What are you looking for in a partner? Gender relates to an individual's biological sex, their sense of self, as male, female, both, or neither, and how they outwardly express themselves. It can be fluid. There can be people who are in the middle. A good friend of mine identifies as androgynous, but on the male side of androgynous. If that's where you are and that's how you feel and that is what you feel yourself is, then be that. I recently met someone at another presentation who identifies as gender fluid and binary. They are male or they are female, and it can change from day to day, but they're never in the middle. And I thought that was really interesting as an identity. So your gender identity is what it is. I identify as a cis male. That means I was born as a male and I identify as a male. But even I have looked at this gender identity issue and said, you know what? There's a lot of variation within that gender identity. How do I choose to express what I am to the world? So take a look at yourself and decide what you are and where you want to be. And be that. Poly is a huge mess. Poly, really, I like to break it down to three things. When I talk about it here tonight, I talk about sex, romance, and play. Play being, all this BDSM stuff we're talking about. On those three categories, you should know where you are and where you want a partner to be. Who will you have sex with? Who will you be romantically involved with? And who will you be playing with? In my relationship, I was sexual and I had romance with my partner and my wife, and that was it. No one else. But I'd really be happy beating up just about anybody. I enjoy tying people up. I enjoy spanking. I enjoy flogging. And I could do that with just about anybody I wanted to. But those other two categories, I was very selective in. The issue becomes if you're on a different page than your partner is and you don't know about those differences. If you're getting together with somebody and you're going to get tied up and spanked and have sex, and for you it's romantic and for them it's not, heartache is in that direction. Know about it. You don't have to be on the same page, but you have to know where each other are. Make sense? Poly is a huge mess. That is not nearly enough to cover it. But there's lots of other groups that you can go to. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of good books on the topic. This is 101, and that's enough. Make sense? Thank you. From here, we talk a little bit about etiquette. This is a dungeon. There's a party here Saturday night, and it is actually the last party at this location. This location will be closing very soon. So, you've come to a few classes. You've gone to some munches. You've reached some people on FetLife. You've talked. You're ready to come to your first party. What should you do? What should you expect? Rule number 1, we already covered. Be very polite. It's worth repeating, which is why I say it's rule number 1 again. Rule 2, when you're in the dungeon, be quiet. I don't mean pin drop quiet. My rule of thumb when you're in a dungeon is people are doing scenes, and I love that we call them scenes because it makes me think of Broadway. And when you're in a Broadway theater and people are on stage creating a scene, they're trying to create a feeling, they're trying to create an emotion, and they're working really hard to do that. So if you're in the audience watching that scene happen, it's really the wrong time to have a conversation with your friends next to you about that fucking Jets game. It's the wrong time. You're going to break that feeling for the people on stage and for the people around you. My rule of thumb for talking in a dungeon, you don't have to be pin drop quiet. If the people who are involved in a scene and playing can understand the words that you're saying, can understand your conversation, you're probably too loud. If they can hear a gentle murmur of conversation, that's expected. That's going to happen. You can't ever stop that. But watch your level of volume when you're in the dungeon.
And I just want to add to that, there is a difference between conversational volume that's going to go on, and when there are 2 or 3 scenes happening and you may hear someone screaming from another scene, or making their in-scene noises, it's kind of like, and I'll use your Broadway analogy, having 3 or 4 stages going at once at any given time. So you may hear from the other stages, but you just don't want to hear about the jet ski. You know.
So, moving on. Rule 3, keep your hands to yourself, people and belongings. A lot of these rules really fit into, I learned it in kindergarten. So why am I going over them when you learned it in kindergarten? The problem is, when you come into a dungeon, especially for the first time, there's loud music playing, it's dark, you're in a new space, you're really excited, you worked up the courage to come out. You've come in and it's everything you thought it would be. There are sexy people doing sexy things that are naked and it's awesome, and then your brain explodes. I like to go over these rules so when your brain explodes, hopefully you can hold on to these few things. Because sometimes when your brain explodes, you do things you wouldn't normally do. But sometimes they can cause a problem. So keep your hands to yourself. People and belongings. Now, let's say that you come into the dungeon. And this lovely woman here is in the dungeon, and she's naked. And I walk up and I touch her breasts. And she's hysterical. She pushes me away, and then she hugs me, and we both laugh about it, and we leave with a smile. And then he does it. And the same thing happens. Pushes him away, they hug, they smile, and he goes on his way. Then this guy does it, and she slaps him in the face. He goes, "Get the fuck away from me." I did it, and it was fine. You did it, was fine. Why did he get hit? Well, she's known me for 20 years, and we're friends, and I'm allowed to do that. Known him for 10 years. He's allowed to do that. She's never met this guy. Keep your hands to yourself. If you don't know you're allowed to touch somebody, you're not allowed to touch them. Assume that, and you'll be good. I like to talk about touching other people, about hugging. If you've gone to a dinner party, and the dinner party is not somebody you know, it's a friend of a friend, and you got invited, you went to the dinner party, it's the first time you've been to this house, you had a great time, you got along with the host and the rest of their family really well, it's the end of the night, you're leaving, do you hug? You ask. You say, I'm going to leave, I connected with you, I really regret, I'm a hugger, would you hug? You put your arms out and ask. And if they say yes, then you hug. And if they say no, then you shake hands very politely and you go home. If you don't have permission to touch somebody else, then you don't have permission. No matter how naked they are, no matter how much other people have done it, no matter how many times you did it at the last party. Maybe it was okay last party, but it's not okay tonight. We've known each other for 20 years, so that's not 101. If you don't know you have permission, then you don't. This also goes for people's belongings. There was a scene that I saw that was a knife scene that happened. They were playing with knives. Ooh, scary, dangerous. Ooh. And it was on one of the massage tables. And there was somebody who was watching, who really enjoyed watching, and he thought some of the knives were fantastic. But he knew he shouldn't interrupt the scene, so he didn't. He watched. He waited. The scene was over. The bottom got off the table. The top and the bottom were having a moment at the end of their scene together, a quiet moment just for the two of them, at the end of the other end of the massage table. And he knew he shouldn't disturb that. So he didn't ask anyone or say anything when he walked up and started to pick up the knives. And the knife top lost their mind. What are you doing? Knife tops in particular are very conscientious of their knives. Because they're sharp, because they're dangerous, and because there may or may not be blood play involved. They will be very meticulous in how they clean those knives at the end. This person should have waited. Don't touch other people's things if you don't know you have permission. If you'd like to see that knife, let the person finish their cuddle time. Let them clean up their knives. When they're done and they put things away, they're probably going to go to the restroom. They'll get a glass of water. They'll have a cookie. And you can see them transition back into a social setting. Once they're transitioned back into that social setting, that's the time to say, hey, I really enjoyed watching what you were doing. That knife with the cool handle and the S-curve, I've never seen one like that before. Could I see that? Most people are very, very happy to share their kink with you. Because you just said what they did was cool. You think my knife is cool. Sure, I'll show it to you. But you have to do it at the right time. Make sense? No recording of any kind, said the man speaking into the microphone. This is an exception tonight. I let everybody know was coming, that this was going to be happening. And what I want you to know is there should be no recording at events. There should be no recording anywhere you go. Video, pictures, audio recording, said the man speaking into the microphone. It is a part of discretion. It is protecting yourself. It is protecting the person sitting next to you. There should be no recording of any kind. We'll get a little bit more into discretion and why in a moment. Put away your mobile phone. That relates to the rule we just talked about. No pictures, no video, no recording. That's why you should put your phone away, because it has a camera on it. Here in this dungeon, there should be no cameras out in the dungeon area. You're allowed to have your phone out in the lounge. The dungeon also provides little round stickers and asks you to put those stickers over the front and rear lens of your phone for the time while you're here. If you need to take out your phone, you're allowed to use it in the lounge, but even there's no recording. There are places, in other places around the country, that will actually have a phone check when you come in the dungeon. Other places will ask you to leave it in your car. Here, they allow you to keep it on you, but it should be stickered and it should be in your pocket or in your bag, unless you're in the lounge area. If it's in your front shirt pocket and it's sticking out and I can see it, that's not good enough. If I can see it, it should be somewhere else. Put away your phone. Very common rule. Address as requested. Hi. I'm Jack. And you are? Abdul. Okay. This is Abdul. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I've just met Abdul. Based on the suit he's wearing, the beard, and the fact that it's Abdul, I'm going to go with Abdul is he, right? Okay. If Abdul in that moment had said, really, I prefer she, I would refer to Abdul as she from here on in, regardless of the beard and the suit and the haircut. Address as requested. It's simply polite. If you're introduced to somebody as Abdul, then he's Abdul. He's not Bob. Again, basic kindergarten stuff. Keep others in mind when you're playing. This applies in a number of different ways. Number one, PlayStations, massage tables, suspension rigs, if there's a bed upstairs. In general, if it's a busy dungeon, you should use a PlayStation for 30 to 45 minutes, max. That includes setup, cleanup, aftercare, your whole scene, 30 to 45 minutes. Because there's a limited number of stations, and in a busy dungeon, there will be people waiting to play. It is polite not to occupy the station longer than 30 to 45 minutes. Keep others in mind. When you're playing with a whip or a flogger, it takes up a lot of space. So when I'm using this, I need to be aware of what's around me. When I was an Eagle Scout, they taught us about the blood circle. Blood circle was usually when you were working with an axe. They applied it to knives, but the most dangerous part were axes. And they taught you to hold the axe by the head and spin in a circle. And hold the axe out, because anything that was in that range, you can hit with the axe. So I'm pretty safe where I am. But if I was over here, suddenly there are people in range of my axe. We called it a blood circle because if I hit you with it, there'd be blood. So it was the blood circle. When you're doing things, you also have to be aware of all around you. Be aware of what's above you. Be aware of what's behind you. If you're not the person holding the flogger, or the whip, you should still be aware of your space. If someone is using it in a certain area and you can't walk by them without risking getting hit, if you approach their area of play and wait politely to catch their eye, they will realize that you're trying to walk by, they will adjust their swing for a few seconds, and you will be able to walk safely by. They will be able to resume their play with their partner, and their partner probably won't even realize there was a change. If you are the person swinging the whip or the flogger, keep your eye out for people that are trying to get by you. Should you be in a space that is so tight and so restrictive, get a spotter who will help people to get by you. I've had to do that in some of the tight spaces I've been in the city. Approach people at the right time. Remember that little knife story? When they come back and they're social again, not in the middle of their scenes. Be aware of other people's time when you're talking, when you're playing. We said playing already with the PlayStations. Be aware if you're talking to that knife person, he may have other things he's planning to do that night. Watch for the social cues that this conversation is coming to the end. Say, oh, we've been talking for half an hour. Do you mind if we talk longer? Just keep it in mind. It's polite. Watch the backswing. Read the rules. This rule I actually insert into this. Most places when you go, parties, dungeon clubs, will have rules. You should read them. Rule 12. Once you've read them, you should follow the rules. This is for your safety, for everyone else's safety, but in general for your comfort as well. Some parties will be sex positive, some parties will be 420 or alcohol friendly, and some will be dry parties and not friendly at all, or 420 friendly. Be aware what you're looking for. Be aware what you're not looking for. I'm not comfortable in a party where people are all messed up. I don't like being there. Even if I'm not playing with those people, the atmosphere makes me uncomfortable. If you had a glass of wine with dinner, I'm probably fine playing with you. You had a six-pack in the parking lot? Hell no. And that's my own tolerance. Realize what your tolerance is and look for places that are going to be within it. A lot of places will have a dress code, usually all in black or kinky or sexy. Make sure you check that out. A lot of dungeon etiquette, flannel shirts just ain't going to fly second row. Just saying. Actually, if it's lumberjack themed, then we're fine. A lot of places will also have themes to their parties, which is an opportunity to play dress up. It can be a lot of fun. We had a bards and ballads theme. We had a lot of Shakespeare here that night. It was pretty awesome. We had a doppelganger party last year. You were encouraged to come dressed as another member of the community. It was fantastic. So if you enjoy that kind of dressing and looking very particular, check the themes. The themes are always awesome. Our last theme was the Final Four. We had people here in basketball shorts in a dungeon. Completely inappropriate, except for the fact that it was a Final Four themed party. So read the rules, follow the rules. Rule 13, talk to a DM. If you're new in a place, there will be DMs, dungeon monitors usually. The dungeon monitors are there to make sure everybody has a good time. When I talk about being a DM, I always encourage people to think of themselves as a flight attendant. You're not a cop, you're a flight attendant. You're there to make sure everybody's safe and make sure everybody has a good flight, help out somebody who needs it, and that's your job. So as a DM, and I DM several times a month at this point, I don't have a lot to do. If things are going well, I'm standing around, I'm watching the room, I'm making sure everybody's being safe and having a good time. A DM is usually somebody that is there because they are trusted by the people running the event. They are knowledgeable enough to look out for your safety. They will be happy to talk with you as long as you don't interfere with them paying attention to the rest of their party doing the job. What's the place like? What's the theme like? When is it busy? I'm interested in seeing rope. Is there anybody I should keep a lookout for? I'd like to get spanked. Is there anybody here that you trust to do that? A DM is a great resource as long as you do not interfere with them doing their job. Make sense? Thank you. Rule 14, be discreet. Gets its own slide. because it's that important. Privacy and discretion. This activity is not like bowling. Remember I mentioned that before. People's families, friends, coworkers, pastors may not know what they're doing on a Saturday night. It can be very costly for some people. If you are a kindergarten teacher, you really don't want your pictures of you naked with a bruised ass showing up at the PTA. But if you have that interest, you should be able to engage in this safely and have the trust of the community behind you. No pictures. Consider having a screen name. Consider what you share, what you do, who you work for, your location, where you work, where your house is, your name, your kids' names, your wife's names. If you have 2 or 3 pieces of information about any individual, and $19.99 with access to the internet, I can find out a whole lot more about you. This is a very trusting, good faith-based community. Do not overshare until you're ready to share, exactly as you would in any other community where you're just becoming part of it. Discretion is also important. There's a munch on Wednesdays, usually about 7 to 10. And as tonight, you come and you show up in street clothes. You don't show up in your fetish wear. Why? Because then people would recognize you and maybe it would be a risk for you. For me, if I show up in my black leather restraining jacket and my big black spiked dog collar that I'm going to wear, what if you sit next to me? And what if your pastor sees you sitting next to me? You might have a very interesting conversation on Sunday. What were you doing with that guy in the straitjacket? Discretion. It's expected from you to protect yourself. Your discretion also protects the person sitting next to you. It is expected from you by the community, and you should expect it from the community back. Parties, when I said read the rules, some parties will ask you to come dressed in street clothes and get changed into your sexy things once you're in the building. This is for exactly the same reason. Because somebody who knows you and saw you go into that building also saw me in my straitjacket go into that building. And again, where were you going? I saw what was going on. You want to protect people's identities. If you're talking to people online, on FetLife, that you don't personally know, that you don't personally have the experience with to trust, people will go fishing for information at times. There is someone I know who was in a separation, and their partner made an account and was trying to get information on their activities and was approaching other people that had RSVP'd to the same parties and asking questions like, "Oh, I'm new. Did you go to that party? I heard it was good." "Really? Who was there? What'd they do?" Very innocent sounding questions. Before you share information about yourself or other people in the community, don't share it with people you don't know. Protect that person as they're going to protect you. Make sense?
Hey everyone, it's Dick, and I know I've never kept it much of a secret just how much I love the Risk podcast, or what an amazing evolution of my own relationship to the show I've had. I went from being a listener to having the pleasure of interviewing the host, Kevin Allison, on episode 39 of Off the Cuffs, to getting up the nerve to pitch my own story, and being asked to perform it at the live show in Brooklyn, and then finally having my story actually featured on an episode of Risk, the podcast. And now it's time for another chapter, literally, but this time as a reader instead of a listener. The Risk book is coming out in July, and it's already available for pre-order at theriskbook.com. It's a collection of some of the best true stories that have ever been featured on Risk, along with brand new stories and interviews with the storytellers. I can't wait to see which of the stories that I've found inspirational over the years that have made it in so I can get a closer look at them. I already have my copy pre-ordered, and I think this is one you'll not want to miss out on. Again, pre-order is available now at theriskbook.com, or you can check out Risk the Podcast, as always, at risk-show.com. Thanks. Back to the show.
Back to the fun. How to approach someone for play. We just went over etiquette. We talked about that. You've been to some classes. You've been to a party. When you go to your first party, I always encourage people not to plan to play if you're coming to a place for your first time. Meet some people. Hang out. See who does what the flavor of the place is like, what the flavor of the people are like. If you actually play, bonus. Awesome. But let's assume you didn't. You've been to some classes. You've been to some parties. Now you're coming back for your second party. How do you go from sitting on the couch to tied up and spanked? How does that happen? And it's actually pretty easy. Can I come over, Sadie? Can I use you as my next guinea pig? Oh, I just want to shake your hand. Hi, I'm Jack. And you are? Raven. At the last party when I saw you, you tied this gentleman over here up and you spanked him, and that was really hot. Could we talk about that a little bit? That's it. There's a lot of information in what the exchange that just happened, and that's why I put it and break it down up on the board for you. Greeting. We now know each other's names. I knew Raven already. I knew that name because I saw the party, and wow, it was hot what I saw her do. But now she knows my name too. I was watching. I have watched. Everybody who ties up and spanks will do it differently. Every single person is different. Raven now knows, not only do I want to be tied up and spanked, but I saw how she did it, and I liked what she did. And not only did what she did, but what she did at the last party with this other gentleman. I saw that, and that's the experience I'm looking to have. I've just told her all of that information right there. What am I looking for? I'm looking for what you did with this person. It was awesome. Compliment. I said what she did was hot. Who doesn't like to hear that? I'm awesome. Wow, thank you for telling me. Compliment is wonderful. I didn't ask her to do it. I said, could we talk about it? I'd appreciate it if you have the time at some point, is another one that I use. Because it allows the person to say yes in the way that's most convenient for them. Maybe we can only talk about it tonight. Maybe she'll say, yeah, get up on the table. Let's do it right now. Maybe she'll say, I just finished. I got to get something to eat. I got to keep my sugar up. Let's get together in about an hour. Maybe she'll say, I got to go home and walk the dog. I'll be at a party in 2 weeks. Will you be there? There's a lot of different ways you can get that yes. If instead you approach her and go, I'd like you to tie me up and spank me right now. Is that okay? You're much more likely to get no, because you sound weird. Hi, introduce yourself. I saw you've just given that person a lot of information and allowed that person to say yes in a way that's convenient for them. And that's how you get from on the couch to tied up and spanked. Be prepared for no. Be gracious. The last thing that I have up on my board is have support. Have support is, what I mean by that is, if you come into a dungeon for the first time and you're not known to the community and they don't know you and you don't know them, if someone like that approaches me for play, I'm less likely to play with them because they don't have the support of other people around them. Support doesn't have to be your best friend in the whole world. It can be some people that you've met in the community over the last few weeks, over the last few months that you've gotten to know. Because if we're going to play together for the first time and I've just met you, sometimes things go wrong. It happens. Best of intentions, sometimes things can go wrong. If something goes wrong, I want to know that there are other people around to support you and support me in that moment. And that's what I mean when I say have support. Make sense? I also know those people that are there for your support are watching out for you while I'm playing with you. Red flags. Red flags I like to go over. They're important. Red flags are not deal breakers. They are moments for you to stop and reconsider. Maybe you do want to not go any further. It's a choice you're going to make personally, but I encourage you to make a red flag a moment of choice. Stop and make it a choice that you're going to go forward. A lot of these red flags are common. They're bad things in any relationship. Some of them sound a lot like flags for domestic violence. Why? Because that's what they sound like. You can have domestic violence in any relationship. These are things that should make you take pause. If it feels wrong, treat it like it is. You're going to get together with somebody, you're going to go back to their house, you're going to get tied up, you're going to get spanked, and then you're going to have coffee together. Something feels wrong. Treat it like it is wrong. Don't go. What's the worst that happens? You miss out on a fun Saturday. What's the best that happens? You don't end up chopped in bags in his freezer. If it feels wrong, treat it like it is. You can get together another time. If somebody's making you uncomfortable, don't get together. Do some more research. Network. Check with other people in the community about this person. Anybody that's afraid of you checking on them probably has a reason. If somebody says, I'd like to network, I'd like to confirm with some people about who you are, that makes me feel better. I'd rather have a person do that. Yes?
And with that same thing, the idea of safe calls?
We'll get there.
Okay.
Are you afraid? Is my next red flag. Some people like to be afraid. I like to use fear in my play. That's not what I'm talking about. Are you afraid? As in, you just woke up, you're naked, you're saran wrapped to a metal table, and Dexter has a knife. Are you afraid? It's a bad thing. Unless your dick wound and then you're turned on. Is someone pushing you further than you agreed? As we talked about, tied up, spanked, coffee. Blowjob was nowhere in there. Someone who talks too much, someone who talks too little. You agreed to get together for coffee, and you met at Starbucks, and hey, Abdul, good to see you. Come on, let's go. I got my car over here. We can go do it. Don't you want to get started? Come on. I don't have much time. Someone talks too much. And then there's someone who talks too little. Hi. Gotta have something near my feet so they can hear me slowly walking. Somebody talks too much, somebody talks too little. It's just that something is socially wrong with this. I'm uncomfortable with it. Go with that feeling. Have they said, I don't play with safe words? But Jack, we haven't covered safe words. We don't know what they are yet. It's okay. Somebody who says that, just don't play with them. It's a bad idea. If that's something you want to deal with in a long-term relationship, that's fine. That's not the one-on-one class. That's not the first time or the 5th time you've met someone. If somebody's going to say to you, you want to play with me? Sure, I don't play with safe words. Don't play with them. It's a bad idea. I only play privately. I play privately, so I'm not well known. I don't meet in public. Okay, there is a chance that this person is secretly working for the CIA and defending our country. It's also possible that they have a bad reputation in the community, and there's a reason they don't do anything publicly. Because if they were seen with you, people would warn you. If someone who's not going to do things publicly, it's not a deal breaker, but it is certainly a moment to consider why. I don't negotiate. That's just fucking hysterical. It's just funny. Everybody negotiates. I was in a relationship for 4 years. I still negotiate. I will know what you need because I have the experience to read you. Oh, wow. If you meet anybody that does that, please send them my way. I have yet to meet a psychic dominant. It would make my night. The fantasy of that is pretty hot, okay? The idea of walking into a room and having someone that you didn't have to tell who's going to do everything that you want to you in just the way you want, in just the hottest way. because they know that's hot. That's an incredible fantasy. But it's a fucking fantasy. If you want to get what you want, you have to tell somebody. And if somebody thinks they can give you what you want without talking to you, it's a delusion. That person sounds dangerous to me. Because what if they're wrong? Do they threaten to abandon you or with violence? Do they offer bribes and gifts to make up for violence? Oh, yeah, that's classic domestic abuse behavior. Yeah, it takes place here too. The one that gets people sometimes and is the threat of abandonment. I had someone come up to me after class a couple of years ago, and they told me about a scene that they had with a former partner. And they were given a lighter to hold on to. And if they dropped the lighter, the scene would end. And I'm okay. Okay, I'm on board. That's a nonverbal ending sign. Great. And then they told me, they also said if I dropped the lighter, our relationship would be over. That's a threat of abandonment. Abandonment, especially for a submissive person, is terrifying. It is abuse to use that against them. Watch out for it. Don't threaten it. And if someone is threatening it to you, that's a massive, massive bad sign. Make sense? Negotiations. Yay! I like to go back and forth between the scary stuff and the fun stuff. So we just finished red flags. Ooh, now we get to negotiations. We covered before how you got from the couch to getting tied up and spanked. Now that the person has agreed to do it, how are they going to do it? What's going to happen? What do you want out of this exchange? How do you have that conversation? You talk to them. Duh. But what do you talk about? One, be honest. If you don't know, you don't know. Perhaps you should approach it as a scene that's more of a lab time scene that we talked about rather than an intense scene. Maybe it's just something to work out. Be honest what you know, what you don't. Hard limits, soft limits. Hard limits are pretty easy to come up with a define. Most people have an agreement on that category. Hard limit is the never happen category. I'm not going to have sex. That's a hard limit. Nope. Not in any way, shape, or form. I'm also not going to get tied up. I also hate blueberries. Do not involve blueberries in any way in our play. Sometimes hard limits don't have to be serious. It can be something simple like blueberries. If you think they're going to come up, then it should be mentioned. Hard limits are the absolutely not, should never happen category. Completely inappropriate. It's a violation of my person if this happens. Soft limits. Soft limits tend to be a little bit of more of a blurry category for a lot of people. Soft limits are usually a not right now category. Maybe not with this person. It's kind of the thing that I might be willing to look into. It's the kind of thing I might be willing to do with some people, but not with you. For you, this is a soft limit. We won't do this tonight. Does that kind of make sense for people? That soft limit definition? Most people will discuss having a hard and a soft limit list. I also like to discuss negotiating for the have to have and the nice to have. Have to have. Well, we're talking about spanking and tying up. Those are the have to haves. Because if we're not having that, we're not doing anything. Those are the have to haves. I want to get tied up and I want to get spanked by Raven. And if she says, well, I'll tie you up, but I'm not going to spank you, well, okay, then the have to haves aren't there. I guess, maybe we won't do it. I'm not interested then. Have to have. Nice to have are the extra things that you can have. Nice to have is the sprinkles and the cherries and the chocolate sauce on top. Because, Raven, I want to be tied up, I want to be spanked. If you could pull my hair and call me a pretty little bitch, that would really make my night. You can negotiate for the nice to haves too. Think about what you'd like to have. Think about what completes that Sunday for you and ask for it. Because odds are very good you can get it. Consider thinking, most people will do that, and writing, most people won't, beforehand. If you take a conscious moment to think about your negotiation, what you want to do, how you want to do it, you can come back after you've done it and decide what you were right about, what you were wrong about, what I could have done better, what I was spot on about, what I was fantastic and did really great. Think about it beforehand. Avoid renegotiations or changes once play has started. This rule applies for everybody. It applies the most for new people in a new relationship trying something new. You hear that new? I mentioned it a whole bunch of times. The first time you're going to play with somebody, again, tie up, spanked. You're going to get together and you're going to meet privately in somebody's house, in their basement, tie up, get spanked, have coffee. That's what you guys have talked about. You get together on a Saturday, you get tied up, you get spanked, and you're really fucking horny. At that point, go to the kitchen and have coffee. The hornier you are, the more excited you are, the more likely you are to agree to do something absolutely crazy. Because you're just that fucking excited. Have coffee. Talk about what a good time you had. And say, are you available next weekend? Because I'd like to come back here next weekend. And next weekend, I want to get tied up and spanked, and then I want to fuck. And then we can have coffee. Would that be okay? If you do it at that first time, you are likely that you could have regrets the next day, something that you wouldn't normally do. You can reach a particular headspace, a particular place in yourself where you don't make the decisions you normally would. Similar to being high, similar to being drunk, you can make decisions that you wouldn't normally would while you're in play space. Don't make decisions then. Make them after and come back next week. This is 101. If you've been in a relationship for 10 years, sure, you can play now. You can make changes in the middle now because you've been knowing the person for 10 years. If you're in the beginning and just getting to know people, stick to the fucking script. Make sense? All right, negotiations. What do you negotiate? Well, you're going to negotiate, again, how you're going to get tied up, what experiences, what you want to have. A good question to ask is, if this is going well, what will that look like? How will I know? That's a great question to ask people. You also want to negotiate some of the specifics. Negotiations are also a time to communicate. Alcohol and drugs, where's your tolerance? I talked about that earlier. I don't judge. If you're willing to play with somebody who's drunk out of their mind, okay, I do fucking judge. That's stupid. But if that's what you want to do, go ahead. Time. How long are we going to play? Remember I said 15 minutes earlier? Is it 15 minutes? Is it a 4-day weekend? What are we going to do? Photos. Any recordings? Can it happen? Should it happen? Who has control of those photos? Whose camera? Whose phone should be used to make it happen? If they're publicly posted, can your face be posted? Should it be covered with a smiley face? The time to have that discussion is before the photos are taken. Make sense? Yay. Bruises. If you change in a communal locker room, you might want to think about where your bruises are going to be, if you're allowed to have them. Do you bruise easily? Where can you bruise easily? When you're getting hit with something, you can bruise. Be aware of it going in. Have that conversation. Talking. Remember I said I like to be called a pretty little bitch? Some people don't like any talking at all. Some people want things to be completely silent. They don't want to have that exchange. And that makes it hotter. Some people want to have particular talking, particular discussions. Some people want to be lectured. Where does that verbal fit? Are you taking any medications? Where's your rescue inhaler? Do I need to know that? Because if you're all tied up, I want to be able to get that for you. What's your current STI status? Great question to have if you're going to be having sex. hydration and food. When was the last time you had anything to eat? When was the last time you had a glass of water? Maybe we should keep one nearby. Related, but I don't put it up there. When was the last time you went to the bathroom? Because I'm going to spend 45 minutes tying you up. And 30 minutes in, I don't want to hear, uh-oh. Pee before you play. Triggers. There's someone I know in the community who has a trigger for belts. If I lift up my shirt and go to take my belt off, it's over. I don't even actually have it happen. That's their trigger. This strap that I have here on the table, I can beat the crap out of them with that. Looks the same. But in their head, it's not. The trigger for them is a belt. I don't know the history of it, and I don't need to. I just need to know that I need to be aware of that and manage that if I play with this person. If you have particular triggers that might come up, you should share them for your own safety and your partner's safety. You do not need to get into all the gory details if you don't want to. The protection piece is what we're going for here. If instead of a belt, your trigger is the smell of frying onions, you may not need to share that. That's really a judgment call there. Sexuality. How sexual are we getting? Not at all. Fingers? Penis in vagina? Penis in your ass? Vibrators, toys, insertables? What's allowed? Kissing? Yeah, funny how we go from anal sex to kissing there, huh? What is it going to be? Because that's even something as simple as kissing should be discussed if it's allowed. Because if you haven't said it is, then it's not. If you're going to be sexual, safe sex, condoms, gloves, other coverings that are needed. Are you okay with them? Are you okay without them? Personally, I think they should have them, but everyone has their own risk profile. I don't judge. Of course I fucking judge. Aftercare. Wow, that's a new word. What does that one mean, Jack? Aftercare is really important. Aftercare really is about how things exit. You've had rope on your wrists. You've been tied up. Your wrists have been above your head. You've been flogged. You've been beaten. You've gotten a little bit into a spacey space with your head. And now things are coming to an end. The floggers have been put down. They have one hand on your back. They're untying your wrists so your wrists can come down. What happens now? How does that end? Do you need a warm blanket? A glass of water? Do you need a hug? Do you need to walk off on your own for 5 minutes and come back? How you exit, how you end the scene is important. Because to bring you back out of that space safely and emotionally stable is important. When I play intensely with somebody, I will often check in with them the next day because that's part of my aftercare. Part of my aftercare is I have to know that you're okay tomorrow. How you exit that is important. There's one very heavy bottom I have played with who can take an extraordinary amount of suffering. And when we're done, aftercare is literally a high five. That's it. There are other people that need 15 or 20 minutes of cuddling, or a candy bar, or a good girl. Think about what your aftercare is. What do you need? Both as a dominant, as a top, and as a submissive. Aftercare applies for dominants and tops too. Personal support, we already covered. Have people around you. We're going to play together. You're going to get tied up. You're going to get spanked. Oh, and if something goes wrong, Abdul here is my friend and he can help out. Safe words. We talked about them earlier. They get their own slide. Safe words are a way especially for the bottom, the submissive in the relationship, in the scene, to exert a level of control, to exert a level of their own safety. In the community, most places will use the default safe words of red and yellow. If you prefer to stick with English, and no means no, and stop means stop, then go with that and make sure your partner knows. You don't have to use red, yellow, or any other safe words. If you'd like to stick with regular English, and that's where you're comfortable, do that. I encourage both people to be aware of the red-yellow system, because most dungeons will use that as their default system. So the DMs and the staff know what's going on. The red-yellow system, or any other words you choose to use in place of them, red is usually a stop. Yellow is a slow down, check-in word. Stop the scene. Maybe slow down. Maybe I need a breather. Maybe I need a different toy. A lot of people will say that we're going to use red, yellow as safe words. So, Raven, we're going to use red, yellow, right? We're good? No, we're not good. Maybe red means something completely different to her than it means to me. Maybe her definition of yellow is use a different toy, and my definition of yellow is I need you to come and talk to me. We can set that up, that's what we're going to use, and then discuss what does it mean. Red is a stop. Yellow, slow down, take it easy, check in, let me breathe. In a public space, in a public dungeon, the red word is particularly important for the bottom's submissive's safety. Because you've been tied up and you've been spanked, and that's what you negotiated for. You are now tied up. You have been spanked. And I'm taking my dick out. That wasn't what we negotiated. But you're tied up. How do you stop me? You say red. And if I've entered into this in good faith, I should stop. If I don't stop and you're in a public play space like you are here in a dungeon, you continue to say red as loudly as you can. And the staff will intervene for your safety. The red-yellow system in a public space like this is primarily for communication with your partner. But in an emergency, it allows you to communicate, this needs to stop right now, to the entire room with one 3-letter word. Have clear communication about what you will use and what it means between the two of you. Nonverbal cues is another one to bring up. Some people will go nonverbal when they play. They will lose the ability to speak. So how does this person have a safe word? You move to something that's nonverbal. A handkerchief that can be dropped. A rubber ball that can be dropped. A squeaky toy, because the littles love the squeaky toys. That can squeak, squeak, squeak to say, that's a stop. I like to use a hand signal. For me, it's just your classic thumb to fingers up in the air motion. That's my yellow, that's my nonverbal red. I like that because you can't drop it, you can't lose it, and you can't forget it at home. That's my red-yellow sign. To the podcast, I hope you can see it. I also have a third safe word that I use. Most people will say there's two, red, yellow. My third category of safe word, I use the word mercy. I've had some very dominant people tell me, I will never have mercy. Good, pick a different fucking word. The word I use is mercy. Red is a stop, yellow is a slow down, mercy is a call to action. Something has to happen right now. Maybe I'm feeling faint. Maybe I can't feel my fingers because I've been tied up too long. Maybe I had gas station sushi for lunch and you're about to have an interesting evening. I like that third category. I encourage you to use it as a call for action. Question?
Do you do a real name one?
No, I don't use the real name one. Any questions from the audience on safe words? Thank you. Consent. Yeah, we finally got around to this one. Notice it's all in caps. It's a big one. Consent is what separates this from a lot of other things. I have this big leather strap here, And if I go onto the subway system and hit people with this, I'll be arrested for assault. How is it different? Because I did it here in a dungeon. Consent is why it's different. Because I spoke to the person and they asked me to do it, and we negotiated for how it's going to happen. Consent is an agreement between participants to engage in activity. There's a lot of discussion in the community right now about consent, about consent and abuse. It's important to understand what consent is. Consent must be knowledgeable, voluntary, and intelligent. Yes, in one of my early classes, I had a lawyer. This was added to this after this lawyer discussion. Knowledgeable, intelligent, and voluntary, because that's what the court systems look for consent. You have to know what you're getting into to be able to consent to it. It has to be voluntary. Forced or coerced or cajoled or pushed doesn't count. If you do not have an enthusiastic yes, it doesn't count. There are a lot of variations to yes. There's one yes that I'll tell you is the absolute best yes you can possibly get. Hell yes. That's the one you're looking for. You may not always get it, but, if Raven says to me, I think I'd like to tie you up and spank you, would you be interested in that? Hell yes. Oh yeah, she knows I'm on board now. And intelligent. You have to be smart about it. It also comes into the category of whether or not alcohol can be a problem or other substances. Consent is also something that I teach before, during, and after. Consent before. You're going to have a negotiation. You're going to sit down and you're going to talk about what's going to happen. Both people are going to agree to that. Unfortunately, language is a fucking minefield. It sucks. It's a way to translate your thoughts to my brain. Sometimes that doesn't work out very well. Consent during. How are things going? Is this what you were expecting? Are you in a good place? Are you ready to continue? Consent during. That communication can continue while you're engaged in activity. It doesn't have to be a big renegotiation. It can be as simple as in, are you still doing okay? And yes, I'm doing great. Please continue. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be small. But those important touchstone moments should continue. After is that after the scene, an hour, a day, touch base. I recently had a scene here where I did a flogging scene. And I had the person, we had a great time. We talked for an hour after the scene. I asked them to check in with me the next day. On FetLife the next day, I got a message and it said, hey, glad you asked me to check in with you. I had a fantastic time. I'd love to play with you again. But now that I've had a day to think about it, this one thing that happened made me a little bit uncomfortable. And I just wanted to talk to you about that. And I responded back and said, you know what? I agree with you. We should talk about that. And so they came back and they said, what happened, I don't have any problem with it. It worked for the scene. It was perfect for the scene. But it just made me uncomfortable, and if we play together again, let's skip that piece. And I got back to them and said, you know what? That piece made me uncomfortable too. It happened. It was right for the scene. I agree with you. But it made me uncomfortable. And these were the things I did then to let you know that I wasn't going to go any further than that. And they came back to me and said, wow, I didn't even realize you had done that, but now that you've pointed it out, when you did those things, it did make me more comfortable. So you can have this conversation afterwards to clear up that communication, especially if you're going to play again with that person, because it allows you to fine-tune your communication skills and fine-tune their communication skills so you can have a better experience next time. So I also talk about consent after. It's a little counterintuitive to consent to something after it's already happened, but consent before, during, and after. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. I once knew someone who negotiated for 90 minutes over a spanking. They came with one of those 4-page check sheets. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And after 90 minutes, they pulled down their pants, they bent over their knees, they got one swat, spank, and they called red. Done. If you're in that position, call red if you are done. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. If you are working with a responsible partner, a responsible dominant, a responsible top, they want to be in the space that you want to be. If both people are not where they want to be, your partner wants you to stop. Do not keep going because you feel obligated, because you feel guilty. If you are done, be done. Because if I am spanking you and you're done and you don't call red, then I am spanking someone who doesn't want to be spanked. And that's not what I want to do. So you're violating my consent by letting me keep spanking you. If you're done, be done. Make sense? Consent can be withdrawn for any reason. Doesn't matter why. If you're done, you're done. The reason doesn't matter. If you want to share it, you can. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. Consent can be withdrawn for any reason. Consent can be withdrawn without a reason. I don't know why I'm done. I just don't feel right now. Red. I don't want to share it. I'm uncomfortable about the reason. It triggered a memory. I'm done. I don't want to talk about it. At any time, for any reason, without giving a reason. You need to understand that on the top dominant side, and you should expect it, and you should expect it from the bottom submissive side. Implied consent is dangerous and often false. Anything that is not yes is no. Do you want to get spanked? I think so. That's a no. Do you want to get spanked? Maybe. That's a no. If it's not yes, it's no. Makes sense? The only thing that is yes is yes. Hell yes is the best. We can't go. I could spend all day talking about consent, but you guys have to go home at some point. Any questions? Thank you. When things go sideways, because it will happen, what do? I had an event that happened here. I think it was last summer. It was August. The air conditioning went out, and some of us were hardcore and stayed and played anyway. It was really hot. It was the first time I'd ever gotten down to my underwear in a dungeon. It was a real moment for me. I was beating my partner, and she called mercy because she was starting to feel nauseous between the experience of the flogging and the heat. And I had to immediately take her down. And nothing happened. But it was good that we had that communication because when something went sideways, I was prepared to take action to handle it. Things will go sideways. Things will go wrong. Think about it and be prepared to do something. When things go sideways, what needs to happen? That after check-in I told you about with that play that I had, that was how I handled. In case anything had gone sideways, I like to check in with people the next day because they've had enough time to process that. That's part of how I prepare for things going sideways. If you don't do that kind of homework, perhaps something happened and the person feels violated and you don't know about it. That's a horrible thing for both people. If you have that check-in afterwards, both of you can leave feeling happy and maybe play again. Maybe you have been violated. Maybe you've been in contact with a bad actor. Maybe you need to contact someone else in the community and let them know what's happened. Ask for guidance. Perhaps you need to get referred and maybe you need to talk to somebody professional, maybe a counselor, maybe a psychiatrist, maybe a lawyer, maybe the police. I don't like to talk about when things go that far. If they do, go to the police. If something has happened, and you have been violated on that level, go to the police. Sorry to get heavy here at the end. But if things have gone that far sideways, ask for help. Go to the authorities if that's what's needed. Hopefully that will never happen to anyone in this room. If it does, my best wishes go with you. Safety. Safe call. Safe call. Safe call is your standard blind date kind of safe call. Somebody that you can get in touch with to say, I'm going on a blind date. I'll check in with you at midnight, and I want you to let you know where I'm going, who I'm seeing. I strongly encourage it if you're meeting privately for somebody for play. Emergency call is a slightly different variant, and I saw writing on FetLife that listed it as ICE, which I love. ICE, in case of emergency. You write down your emergency contact, you put it in a number 10 envelope, you seal it, you staple it, you write ICE on the front of it. Because if something goes wrong, who should that person be contacting? Yes, everyone has their emergency contact on their cell phone. Maybe it's your mom. When something's gone wrong because you got tied up in a basement and spanked, is your mom the person that we should be calling? You might have a different emergency contact in that circumstance. If you have that, you put it in an envelope, you have ICE on it, both partners can say, this is where my ICE envelope is. You will hopefully never need it. But if you get together, you get spanked, you get tied up, you have coffee, and on the way out to your car, you trip and hit your head. You're now in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. Who in your real life should we let know? That's what your ICE is for. Other things about safety. Network. Often. Check references. You're going to play with somebody. You're going to get together. Who are they? Who knows that? Other people in the community. You want to get together and you're going to play with Medic privately. What do I think about her? Would I say that she's okay? Would I say that she's safe? Would Seish? Would Brother Wolf? Would Dick? If 3 or 4 of us say she's dangerous, maybe it's you want to reconsider. If 3 or 4 of us say she's safe and one person is, I don't know her that well, that's at least you've checked. You've done your due diligence. Network. People in the public community are known. We all know each other, and we are happy to reinforce. You want to get together. You're going to get together with me. We're going to do needle play. If you check with people in this room, they will all tell you, I don't know anything about needle play. I'm friends with them, but they will honestly tell you, no, I've never seen Jack do that. Network. Don't be afraid to move slowly. Move at your own speed. Don't move too fast. They'll talk about sub-frenzy and dom-frenzy for people who just get involved. And that's a 12-year-old in a candy store who's unescorted. Take your time. It can still be that thrilling and exciting. Educate yourself and take the time to experience and enjoy the intricacies of each piece of thing that you're going to learn. If you put them all together at once, it'll be overwhelming, it'll be fantastic, but you won't appreciate the individual pieces of it. And the individual pieces can be fantastic. Don't let yourself get or feel rushed. You are not obligated. Just because you spent 90 minutes negotiating doesn't mean you need to go through the entire thing. When you're done, be done. That's being honest with your partner, and that's the most important thing. First aid, supplies, and training. This is my first aid kit. It is in my toy bag. Wherever I go to play, this comes with me. There are Band-Aids, there's Neosporin, there's alcohol wipes, there's shears, there's cold compresses, there's ace bandages. This is full of all kinds of crap. Because when something goes sideways, I'm ready for it. A little bit of first aid supplies, a little bit of first aid training goes a long way, whether you're on the top or the bottom of the situation. Band-Aids, Neosporin, and alcohol wipes. When you're getting beat with a big leather strap, if there's a tiny break in your skin, that's a little bit of blood. Ew, it's gross. Really? alcohol wipe, Neosporin, Band-Aid, and now I'm going to beat you again.
Gloves.
Gloves is another thing, yes. I also have gloves in my bag. You can do all that because you have the supplies and the training ready. If that happens and you don't have any of that handy, it can bring your play to a standstill, because it should. A little bit of first aid supplies, a little bit of training. So, at the bottom, it kind of got cut off. Safety is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the top or the dominant. Everyone is responsible for safety. The top, the bottom, the dominant, the submissive, everybody. You should be looking out for your safety and your partner's safety. Everyone involved. Make sense? Yeah, I've been letting you slide on the hand thing for a while. Mentoring. This applies specifically to those that will identify as female in the room. If you've been on FetLife for more than a day and you have a picture, you've probably gotten messages from people willing to mentor you and show you the ropes, especially while you're sucking my cock. Those are not mentors. Mentoring, by definition, is primarily a guiding, teaching relationship. It is somebody that can help you on your journey by sharing how they have gone through theirs. It is primarily guiding, teaching. No play, no power exchange, no sex, no romance. You can learn from somebody you're romantic with. You can learn from someone you're having sex with. But that is no longer primarily a teaching, guiding relationship. That's now a fuck buddy. Don't go under the delusion that it's still a mentor. And someone who expects that from you to be a mentor is fucking lying. I get a little cranky. Local resources. TNG Long Island are for those Long Islanders that are under 35. If you're over 35, you're old because you're no longer TNG. That's me, by the way. Life in Nassau is one of the local community groups. They hold a class a month and a munch every month. LAL&R, Long Island Northern Roses, is another local educational group. They typically have 2 classes a month at a place called World 2 off the Southern State. We just had one on gender and gender fluidity. It was fantastic. Suffolk County Kinksters is another group here on the island that usually hosts munches and, at this point, 1 play party a month. Run by Miss Lola. She runs an amazing event. If you're interested in going, check it out. Off the Cuffs, on the bottom, are the people that I'm holding this microphone for. They are a kink and BDSM podcast. They've been going for 2 years now. They haven't missed a single week. I'm on episode 6. I'm a little bit on one of the episodes from the spring. There's an episode called 3 Doms Walk Into a Room. I was on that one, and now I'm going to be on this. They are a fantastic couple of guys. They started off with just interviewing some of the local people in their first few podcasts. They've expanded. They've done cam girls, authors, other podcast people, other professionals. It's been pretty amazing to watch them go for the last 2 years. If you're not listening to Off the Cuffs and you have the time, I strongly encourage you to check it out. If nothing else, you will be entertained. LIC, Long Island Consensual Kink, is the other organization here that I'm going to talk about, and it's actually the one that I'm actually an officer for. I'm their sergeant-at-arms, responsible for dealing with consent and consent violations and those types of issues. If you run into something like that, it is a resource that is available to everyone in the community. You do not need to be a member of that organization to make use of those services. If it is something serious, whereas a consent violation, that may be something like a rape, I'm going to refer you to talk to the police and talk to a professional. If it was a negotiation and something went wrong and I'd like some help talking to that partner, I'm happy to get involved there. I am not a rape counselor. And if I talk like I am, I'm not doing a service to those people that are coming to me for help. But I will refer you to things like NCSF, who do have contact with the right types of professionals and support groups to get you what you need in those circumstances. Long Island Consensual Kink is usually throwing 2 play parties a month, and they've been run here up until now. The last one that was here will be this Saturday. If you're interested in coming down, attending this class is actually part of the vetting process. So go you for being here. This is the list for those who attended this class. Because they will use this class for vetting purposes, I will not violate your privacy. If someone asks me from one of the local organizations if this FetLife profile attended the 101 class and you'd like me to say you were here, please put your name on this sheet. If you do not put your name on this sheet and I am asked if you are attended, I will say no, out of respect for your privacy. So I will pass that sheet around. Please list yourself with your FetLife profile name only, because that's what I will confirm attended the class. This slide that came up is a bunch of acronyms. I put it at the end. I usually don't talk about it because I hate them all. There are a bunch of ways to deal with consent. SSC is safe, sane, and consensual. It's been around for a long time. Some people will practice what they call RAC, which is wish-aware consensual kink. PRIC is personal responsibility and consensual kink. The one that I don't put up there is BORK. Anybody know what BORK means? Balls out risky kink. The reason I hate these is because they're acronyms, and it's really easy to say, I'm SSC, I'm RAC, and then have a fight about it. Acronyms are a bunch of fucking letters. Have a conversation with somebody. The conversation is what you want to have. The letters don't fucking matter. I put it up there only so if you guys hear people arguing about it, if you're in the community for 5 or 10 years, you can pick one and then fight with other people if you want to. I think it's a bunch of crap. Have a conversation. The words are way more important than the letters. I will point out all 3 of them have the word consensual, though. Then I want to say thank you for everybody coming down. I really appreciate everybody being here. This is the last time I'll be able to do this in this location. I am looking for an additional space that would let me do this for basically nothing, so if you come up with something, please contact me. Off the cuffs, thank you for inviting me to have this recorded. It's pretty fantastic. For anyone out there in the world that's listening to this, my FetLife profile is Jack-TPK. If you have any questions about running a 101, I have some things to say about the style and the way that I've developed this. I'd be happy to talk to anybody there about it. Other than that, let's put the microphone down and we can do a little bit of lab time maybe. Thank you, everyone.
You know where to find us. We do it every week.
Exactly, and we'll be back to the regular format next week.
Yeah, if you wanna reach out to Jack-TPK, he is on FetLife at Jack-TPK.
Yep.
And if you want to get in touch with us, listen to the end of another episode.
Good night.
I want to make love to your hair.
Fair enough.
Good. You got what you need?
I think so, yeah.
Were you recording that?
Yeah.
Awesome.